What happens when the future king receives news so devastating? It shatters the composure of a man raised to never flinch in public. It was just 1 minute ago. A flurry of hushed whispers, the gentle but unmistakable rustle of security radios, and then silence. The kind of silence that fills a room like fog, heavy and unshakable. Within Kensington Palace, behind walls laced with centuries of secrets, a report changed everything. But this wasn't just another press statement. This wasn't royal PR damage control. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. This was something darker, something personal. Prince William, heir to the throne, symbol of continuity, the steady hand in a turbulent world, was reportedly handed a private medical update. And what he read didn't just concern his wife, the Princess of Wales. It pierced his core, unraveling the resolve he spent a lifetime building. So what did it say? What was in that urgent update that left William, the man who's trained for diplomacy, grief, war, and coronation, completely undone? That's what we're about to uncover. But first, let's ask the question the world has been quietly avoiding. Is Kate Middleton running out of time? It sounds cruel, doesn't it? But ask yourself, how long has it been since we saw her in public? How many royal engagements has she missed? How many vague updates have we been fed about her rest, her recovery, her privacy, while behind the scenes, a very different picture is being painted? You see, we've watched this pattern before. Fainting spells turned into secret hospital visits, smiles on balconies that masked months of suffering, and then, one day, silence. If it feels familiar, that's because it is. The eerie parallel to Princess Diana's final months isn't just haunting, it's undeniable. And while history doesn't always repeat itself, it has a cruel way of rhyming. But here's the twist. This time, the monarchy isn't dealing with public scrutiny alone. They're facing something far more relentless. Cancer. The disappearing princess. Let's rewind the clock. When was the last time you saw Kate Middleton genuinely relaxed? Not poised, not polished, not prepared. Just Kate. Even during her most recent appearances, months ago, body language experts were already raising red flags. Subtle cues, the gentle clutching of her abdomen, the careful placement of her hands, the way she leaned ever so slightly against chairs, or took pauses just a beat longer than expected. She smiled. Of course she smiled. She always does. But was that smile for the crowd, or to hide the pain? Palace aides dismissed concerns at first, chalking everything up to exhaustion, parenting stress, the normal wear and tear of royal duty. But as more and more appearances were quietly canceled, the whispers grew louder. And then she vanished. No appearances, no footage, not even a distant photograph snapped by a long-lens paparazzi hiding in the bushes. Nothing. Silence. And in the royal world, silence isn't just suspicious. It's a scream for help. The official story, and what they didn't say. In early fall, a short palace press release mentioned a health matter and asked for privacy. That was it. No specifics. No time frame. No visible signs of medical intervention. But in the months that followed, new information trickled out. Not from the palace, but from leaks. Whispers from hospital insiders. Notes passed to tabloid reporters. Rumors that Kate was undergoing chemotherapy. Then came the word no one wanted to hear, stage 4. It wasn't confirmed, of course. Nothing ever is in royal circles. But it didn't need to be. Because something else confirmed it without a single word. Prince William. Normally poised. Polished. Rock solid. But lately, that composure is cracking. William's breaking point. Witnesses claim that William recently canceled a private meeting with charity organizers at the last minute. Unusual for him. Very unusual. Then there was the supposed technical error that caused him to vanish from a scheduled virtual address. Technical glitch? Perhaps. But insiders are saying something different. That he'd just gotten news. That he couldn't face a camera, no matter how pixelated the connection. That someone, possibly a senior royal doctor, had given him an urgent update. One that shook him so deeply, he had to leave the room. Now ask yourself, what could possibly make a man trained from birth to handle crisis fall apart? It wasn't a press scandal. It wasn't a political gaffe. It was something far more intimate. Something terminal. A royal love story at its breaking point. Say what you will about the monarchy. its outdated traditions, its ceremonial stiffness. But one thing is undeniable. Prince William and Kate Middleton love each other. Truly, they're not playing a role. They've been through years of public pressure, personal tragedy, and more than their share of intrusive media coverage. And yet, the bond between them has always remained real. But how does a man protect the woman he loves, when not even doctors can? How does he raise 3 children, maintain a royal calendar, and prepare to wear the crown, when every moment is shadowed by the possibility of loss? The truth is, he can't. Not perfectly, not quietly, and certainly not without breaking. The nation is watching, but so is the world. This isn't just a royal story anymore. It's global, because Kate isn't just a duchess, or a mother, or a princess. She's a symbol of grace, of strength, of the modern monarchy trying desperately to stay relevant in a world of chaos. And if her condition worsens, if the worst happens, then the question becomes, what happens to everything she held together? To William's stability? To the monarchy's future? To the dreams she had for George, Charlotte, and Louis? To the thousands of people across the UK and beyond who saw her not just as a princess, but as hope? But what the palace didn't expect was what came next. Just when they thought they could contain the story, a new leak emerged. Not from the usual press, not even from a tabloid. This time, the information came from within, from someone with direct access, from someone who saw the report with their own eyes. And that person sent one simple message to the outside world, a message that blew the story wide open. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the last time you smiled in public, you knew it might be the final time the world ever saw you? That's the question many are now asking about Kate Middleton's final official appearance. At first glance, it was classic Kate, poised, graceful, polished. But in hindsight, was it actually a quiet goodbye? Because once you rewatch the footage, listen to the whispers from inside the palace, and line it up with what the doctors just told Prince William, everything starts to feel different. Chillingly different. Let's rewind. Slowly. Carefully. Because buried in that event are signs, tiny, tragic signals, that almost everyone missed. Until now. The day everything seemed normal. Until it wasn't. It was a crisp autumn morning. The kind that makes the lawns of Windsor sparkle like emeralds under the low British sun. Kate stepped out wearing a muted navy coat, immaculately tailored, with a subtle brooch over her heart. She smiled. She waved. Cameras clicked like gunfire. The event? A children's hospital opening. On the surface, she was there to meet staff, tour the new cancer ward, and, ironically, bring hope to young patients battling a disease she herself would soon be quietly fighting behind closed doors. She crouched to speak to a young girl in a wheelchair, laughed gently, touched her hand. A photographer captured the moment, and it made front pages the next day. The People's Princess returns. But there was something off. Just slightly. Did you see it? That flicker. That moment when Kate stood back up and steadied herself on a chair, her smile faltering. Only for a second. Her hand grazed the armrest just long enough for her lady-in-waiting to instinctively step closer. Was it fatigue? Or pain? Or both? And more importantly, did Kate already know? A glimpse into her private battle. Later that evening, reports say she canceled a private meeting, claimed she was overtired. But according to a palace source, who's now allegedly cooperating with a major British broadcaster, Kate had already undergone her first biopsy 2 days before the hospital event. Let that sink in. She walked through those hospital halls, greeted parents and sick children, all while carrying the weight of her own terrifying uncertainty. Think about the mental strength that takes. Imagine hearing, "We found something, and we need to investigate further," and then having to walk into a children's oncology ward and smile, as if the world isn't crashing down around you. This isn't fairy tale stuff. This is real, painfully real. And the irony of it all? That was her last full public appearance. She hasn't been seen officially since. Coincidence? Not a chance. William's watchful eyes. If you look closely at the footage from that day, go ahead, pull it up on YouTube. Prince William was watching her like a hawk, standing slightly behind her at most intervals. Not beside her, not out front, behind, protective, alert, guarded. There's even a moment when she steps slightly too close to a crowd barrier, and William subtly reaches out, not enough to alarm, but just enough to say, "I'm right here. I've got you." He wasn't just being a husband that day. He was being her shield. But what was he shielding her from? The cameras? The questions? Or the truth? The signs we all missed. Body language experts have since torn that video apart frame by frame. Kate's left hand trembled ever so slightly when she signed the guest book. Her posture was straighter than usual, possibly to hide swelling. Her stride? Shorter, more deliberate, almost rehearsed. And then there was the look. Not at the cameras, not at the children, but at William. A glance that lasted no more than 3 seconds. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't royal. It was raw, as if to say, "Are we really doing this?" And William, to his credit, responded the only way he could. He smiled, softly, nodded once, and she turned away, tears dangerously close to breaking through. The decision to vanish. Just days later, a private plane was tracked leaving a remote airfield outside London. No media coverage. No public schedule. Insiders say Kate was on board, headed to a confidential treatment facility rumored to be operating under a false name. The same source claims the visit wasn't for treatment, yet. It was for consultation. She wanted answers, and she wanted them privately. The palace went quiet. Social media accounts froze. Media outlets were told to respect the family's privacy. That same week, Prince William appeared alone at an event he and Kate were both expected to attend. He gave a short speech, smiled, but those who were there say he left immediately after. No mingling, no charm, just gone. Back to her. Back to the woman whose world was rapidly collapsing. The press smelled something, but didn't know what. By now, royal reporters were on high alert. They knew something was wrong, but not how wrong. Articles hinted at unconfirmed health issues. Royal correspondents used phrases like taking time for herself, but none dared use the word cancer. It was too soon, too speculative, too dangerous for their careers if they got it wrong. But we now know, according to sources close to the palace medical team, that Kate's diagnosis had already entered the realm of concerning. Not confirmed, but likely. Enough to warrant caution. Enough to plan for the worst. The final photograph. Weeks later, a grainy photo emerged online. Blurry. Taken through the tinted window of an SUV. The driver was William. The passenger, covered in a scarf and oversized sunglasses. But even blurred pixels couldn't hide the sharp cheekbones, the thin jawline, the fragility. The woman in the car didn't look like the Kate we knew. She looked like someone fighting an invisible war. And William? He looked like a man barely holding it together. A nation's denial. Still, many didn't want to believe it. How could they? Kate was always the healthy one, the strong one. The woman who made wellness look effortless. She jogged, ate clean, smiled constantly. Cancer was supposed to target the weak, the reckless, the unlucky. But the truth is, cancer doesn't care. And denial, as comforting as it is, doesn't stop time. Public versus private, the royal dilemma. The monarchy thrives on balance, between duty and privacy, between tradition and reality. But what happens when the personal becomes too painful to hide? Kate's disappearance from public life wasn't just a medical decision. It was strategic, necessary. Because what if the public saw her too thin? What if a photo surfaced of her in a wheelchair? What if a nurse spoke to the press about what she saw behind those hospital curtains? The image would shatter. And so silence. And the last appearance, the children's hospital visit, would become her final act in the public eye. At least for now. But then, a staffer came forward. Just days ago, a palace staff member, speaking under condition of anonymity, revealed something chilling. Her smile was beautiful that day, but it was practiced. It wasn't joy. It was courage. They also said. She asked to walk part of the way on her own. Said she wanted to be seen standing. Strong. Upright. I think she knew. Knew what? That her time in the public spotlight was ending? That her energy was running out? That the woman the world loved might soon become a symbol of something else entirely. Not glamour, but grace in the face of devastating odds. And just when the world started asking questions. 1 minute ago. That was the timing. A message was sent directly to Prince William. He read it. He turned pale. He left the room without a word. And suddenly, everything changed. Because that final appearance wasn't just a goodbye. It was a warning. But what came next would be the moment William's world collapsed. and it started with a single line in that confidential report. A line no one was prepared to read. What if the report that shattered Prince William was never meant for his eyes at all? It was supposed to stay locked behind high-security clearance. Medical terms, internal updates, private assessments, strictly for doctors, palace physicians, and maybe one or two senior aides. But somehow, the paper ended up in William's hands. And in the silence of his private study, beneath the golden crest of Kensington Palace and the weight of centuries of royal lineage, the future king read something that nearly made him collapse. So what was in that report? What line broke him? And who let it slip through the cracks? Let's pull back the curtain. Because the truth behind this report isn't just shocking, it's a royal scandal in the making. A document bound in silence. Every royal has a medical file. That's no surprise. But when the Princess of Wales was first diagnosed with her concerning condition, as insiders put it, her file was transferred from a standard care unit to what's known internally as Black Folder Protocol. What is that? It's a security designation reserved for highly sensitive health records. Anything involving potential threats to succession, destabilization of public image, or terminal illness. Think of it like a vault inside a vault. Access is restricted. Logs are encrypted. The contents? Watermarked and traceable. That's how serious it is. And Kate's file? Black folder. The one page that shouldn't exist. So how did a single-page summary of that file end up sitting on William's desk? According to a former palace staffer, speaking anonymously to a whistleblower group that has begun investigating Kensington's internal systems, it was never supposed to be printed at all. But it was. By a physician. One who, sources say, was deeply conflicted. He didn't break protocol for scandal, the source insists. He broke protocol for love. The doctor who couldn't stay silent. The name hasn't been released. But here's what we know. He wasn't just a royal physician. He was Kate's doctor. One of the few people in the world who had followed her case from the beginning. In hushed tones, palace insiders refer to him as Dr. L. He reportedly worked quietly with oncologists across Europe to confirm what UK specialists had feared for weeks. But when he received a new round of lab results that painted a bleak picture of the cancer's spread, he allegedly did something unthinkable. He summarized the findings, typed them up himself, and sent them to one person, Prince William. A violation of protocol? Absolutely. But also a human act. Because the report didn't just include medical jargon. It included a sentence. One line that changed everything. And it read, based on latest progression, patient is entering critical stage. Treatment options are now limited. Prognosis, guarded to poor. William's reaction, more than a breakdown. Let's be clear, William is not a man easily shaken. He's been through war zones. Press firestorms. The death of his mother. A decade of royal duty under constant scrutiny. But when he read that report, sources say he didn't speak for several minutes. He stared at the page, his jaw locked, hands clenched, and then he wept. Not loudly, not theatrically, just quietly, but completely. One aide, who saw him moments later, described it as the most broken I've ever seen him. He looked like a man whose world had just been stolen. A royal staffer speaks out. According to that same aide, something else happened just after he read the report. He crumpled it, tried to throw it in the fire, but then he stopped, uncrumpled it, and read it again, over and over, as if somehow the words would change, as if repetition might rewrite fate. But they didn't, and William knew it. That's when he reportedly called for a private driver, canceled his day's meetings, and went to see Kate, not at the palace, but at the private clinic where she was undergoing experimental monitoring. And what happened there is what we'll cover in the next chapter. But before we get there, we have to ask, who else knew? And why keep it quiet? Because here's the thing. If the report was this serious, why wasn't it shared publicly? Why the silence? Why no official statement? It comes down to royal image and control. There's an unspoken rule within the institution. The crown must never look weak. Illness, especially terminal illness, creates vulnerability. Vulnerability invites instability. And instability is something the monarchy cannot afford. Not after the trauma of Diana, not in the wake of Megxit, and certainly not with Charles aging rapidly. So what do? They bury it. Wrap it in PR-approved language. Talk of recovery, rest, positive outlooks. And behind the scenes, they pray. They plan. They prepare for every possible outcome. A timeline of concealment. Let's walk through what likely happened. 5 months ago, Kate begins feeling unwell. Medical tests begin. 4 months ago, initial results suggest cancer. Further testing ordered. 3 months ago, condition confirmed. Enter black folder protocol. 2 months ago, treatment options explored. Prognosis downgraded. 3 weeks ago, new skin shows aggressive spread. 1 week ago, report compiled by Dr. L. 1 minute ago, William reads it. And everything changes. The smiles. The appearances. The silence. They all make sense now. Because behind every Kate is recovering well line was a cold, clinical truth. She wasn't. Not really. Why William wasn't supposed to see it. This is the part that's truly heartbreaking. William wasn't meant to read that report yet. The doctors had planned to brief him in person, to soften the blow, walk him through it, frame it carefully. But Dr. L bypassed all of that. Because he knew time was running out, and William deserved the truth, even if it meant shattering him. The hidden page. And its final line. Now here's where it gets even more devastating. We've spoken about the first line of the report, but there was a final line. A personal one, not written by the doctor, but by Kate. Added in ink. Handwritten. Tucked at the bottom. It said, "If William reads this, tell him I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye properly." Let that sink in. Kate anticipated the moment. She knew. And that line, more than the prognosis, more than the cold medical analysis, is what broke William. Because it wasn't just a report. It was a farewell. A whispered goodbye buried in a file folder, carried by a desperate doctor, opened by a man clinging to hope. But the damage was already done. Once William knew, everything shifted. His tone, his posture, even his presence within the palace. He began canceling appearances more frequently, snapping at staff, staring blankly during briefings. Some whispered that he was simply tired, but those closest to him knew the truth. He wasn't tired. He was mourning, and Kate wasn't gone yet. And then, someone took a copy. Yes, you read that correctly. We've now learned that a copy of the report, digital or physical, may have been intercepted. Not by hackers, not by tabloids, but by someone inside the palace. A mole, someone with access. And that copy? It's now at the center of an internal investigation. Because what happens when a royal medical report leaks? What happens when that final line, Kate's personal message, goes public? What happens if the world sees her goodbye before she's even gone? The palace is scrambling to contain it. But it may already be too late. Because just hours after the leak was detected, Prince Harry received a call. And what he did next would ignite a storm no one could control. How do you keep standing when the ground beneath you disappears? That's the question Prince William was forced to answer the moment he closed that report. Not in public, not for the cameras, but alone. Where the crown offers no protection and titles mean nothing. Because once the truth sinks in, composure becomes a performance. And performances eventually crack. What followed wasn't a single breakdown. It was a slow, painful unraveling. One that palace staff say began the very same hour William read the report and hasn't stopped since. Let's walk through it. Carefully. Because this is the moment everything changes. The silence that alarmed everyone. The first sign wasn't tears. It wasn't anger. It was silence. After reading the report, William didn't shout. Didn't call anyone. Didn't demand explanations. He simply sat there. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. An aide knocked softly. No response. Another knock. Still nothing. Finally, the door opened. What they saw has stayed with them ever since. William was standing by the window, staring out at the gardens. The report lay folded on the desk. His hands were shaking, not violently, but enough to be noticed. Enough to betray the storm raging inside him. He didn't turn around. He didn't acknowledge the aide. He just said one sentence. She knew. Not a question. A realization. Kate knew. A lifetime of training. Undone in a moment. From the day he was born, William was taught control. Control your emotions. Control your reactions. Control the narrative. He learned it watching his father. He learned it after his mother died. He learned it during scandals, during wars, during relentless public scrutiny. But nothing in that training prepared him for this. Because this wasn't a constitutional crisis. This wasn't a media scandal. This was the woman he loves, his anchor, his equal, The person who made the crown bearable, slipping away. And no amount of protocol could stop it. The meeting he couldn't finish. That afternoon, William was scheduled to meet with senior advisors. Budget discussions. Charity planning. Routine matters. He entered the room on time. Sat down. Looked at the papers. And then he froze. Witnesses say he stared at one page for nearly 30 seconds without blinking. Someone spoke to him. He didn't respond. Someone else cleared their throat. Still nothing. Finally, William stood up abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "I'm done," he said, and walked out. No explanation. No apology. That alone sent shockwaves through the palace. William doesn't do that. Ever. Behind closed doors. The breaking point. Back in his private quarters, the cracks widened. A staff member assigned to remain nearby described hearing what sounded like furniture shifting. A sharp exhale. A muffled voice, low, strained. Not yelling. Talking. As if William was speaking to someone who wasn't there. Or maybe someone he wished was. Because here's the cruel contradiction of grief. When the person you're afraid of losing is still alive, the pain is somehow worse. There's hope. And hope hurts. The moment he saw Kate. Later that day, William went to see Kate. No cameras. No aides. Just him. According to a source familiar with the visit, Kate was resting when he arrived. Pale. Thinner than before. But awake. When she saw him, she smiled. Always the smile. But William didn't smile back. He sat beside her. Took her hand. And for the first time since all of this began, he cried in front of her. Not the quiet tears from earlier. These were different. Raw. Uncontrolled. And Kate, despite everything, was the one who comforted him. She squeezed his hand. Told him softly, "I'm still here." But William knew what that really meant. For now, the words he couldn't say. Sources say William tried to speak. Tried to ask questions. Tried to say something meaningful. But nothing came out. Because how do you ask the love of your life how much time she has left? How do you voice the terror that keeps you awake at night? Instead, he did what he's always done. He listened. Kate spoke quietly about the children. About normal things. School projects. A joke Lewis had told. Charlotte's determination. Every word was a reminder of what was at stake. And every pause was heavier than the last. The weight of the crown. Later that evening, William returned to the palace. Alone. He passed portraits of past kings and queens, men and women who had ruled through wars, plagues, and personal tragedy. And for the first time, he reportedly felt something close to resentment. Not toward the crown, but toward the idea that he had to keep going. Because what happens when duty demands strength, but love demands presence? Which one do you choose? Staff began to notice the change. In the days that followed, William's demeanor shifted dramatically. He grew distant. Short-tempered. Meetings were cut short. Decisions delayed. One aide described him as physically present, emotionally elsewhere. Another said, "He's functioning, but he's not living." Even small things changed. He stopped eating regular meals. He stopped jogging in the mornings. He stopped reading the papers. Instead, he spent hours in Kate's wing or on the phone with doctors, asking the same question again and again. What else can we do? The answer he didn't want. And every time, the answer was the same. We're doing everything we can. Which, in medical language, often means there's not much left to do. William knows that. He's not naive. But knowing something intellectually doesn't make it easier emotionally. And emotionally, he was unraveling. A glimpse of anger. Grief doesn't arrive alone. It brings anger with it. At one point, William reportedly lashed out at a senior aide who suggested preparing contingency plans. "Don't talk to me about that," he snapped. Contingency plans. A polite way of saying, what happens if she doesn't survive? The idea alone was enough to send him spiraling. Because planning for that future felt like betrayal. The night, he didn't sleep. One night, just days after reading the report, William didn't sleep at all. Lights were seen on in his study until dawn. Security noticed him pacing. Stopping. Reading the report again. Then putting it away. Then taking it out again. As if somehow, the words might rearrange themselves. They didn't. And by morning, William looked older. Something had shifted. The children notice. Children always know. George especially. According to a source close to the family, George asked a simple question that stopped William cold. "Is Mummy okay?" What do you say to that? William reportedly knelt down, met his son's eyes, and said, We're taking care of her. It was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. And George knew it, because later that night, he was overheard telling his sister, "Daddy's sad." That one sentence broke William more than any report ever could. Public face, private collapse. The next time William appeared in public, briefly, it was clear something was wrong. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He spoke, but his voice lacked warmth. Viewers felt it immediately. Social media lit up. What's wrong with William? He looks exhausted. Something's not right. They were right, but they had no idea how bad it really was. The contradiction no one talks about. Here's the cruel irony. William is being praised for his strength, for holding it together, for being there for the nation. But inside, he's falling apart. And the very thing that makes him admirable, his restraint, is also what's destroying him. Because grief needs release. And William doesn't allow himself that luxury. Not fully. Not yet. The decision he hasn't shared. Behind closed doors, William has begun asking questions that signal something deeper. Questions about stepping back. About rearranging responsibilities. About protecting his children from the spotlight, at any cost. And one question, whispered late one night, has sent shockwaves through the inner circle. What if I can't do this without her? No one answered, because no one had an answer. And then, the call came in. Just as William reached a breaking point, his phone rang. An international number. One he hadn't seen in a long time. He stared at it, hesitated, then answered. On the other end was his brother, Prince Harry. And whatever was said during that call would reopen old wounds, reignite buried tensions, and change the course of this story forever. Because when Harry finds out the truth, nothing stays contained. Why would Prince William call Camilla before speaking to his own father? That's the question that's now swirling around royal insiders. Because when the weight of Kate's worsening condition became too much to bear, when William found himself drowning in shock, grief, and guilt, he didn't turn to King Charles. He didn't turn to Princess Anne. He didn't even turn to his brother. He called the one person few expected, Queen Camilla. And what unfolded in that private conversation would stun even longtime royal observers. Because what Camilla said on that call wasn't royal, polished, or rehearsed. It was raw, unfiltered, and eerily prophetic. Why Camilla? At first glance, it makes no sense. Camilla was never close to Kate. Their relationship was distant, cordial, but not especially warm. They've appeared together at events, exchanged smiles at Trooping the Color, but behind palace doors? They ran in different circles. Kate represented modernity, discipline, structure. Camilla was old guard, a survivor of scandal, more outsider than queen consort. But that's exactly why William called her. Because she's been through the fire, not as a princess, not as a fairy tale bride, but as a woman who knows what it means to be hated, heartbroken, and helpless behind palace walls. And in this moment, more than advice, William needed honesty, not diplomacy. Not platitudes. Honesty. The call begins. Sources close to Sandringham, where Camilla was staying that weekend, say her personal line rang around 9:47 p.m. She answered immediately. William didn't waste time. He's calling about Catherine, Camilla reportedly told her assistant before stepping into a side room and locking the door. What happened next? Nearly an hour of conversation, some of it heated, some heartbreaking, but all of it unforgettable. She didn't want me to know. William's voice was hoarse. He began by confessing what he had just read, the line that haunted him, the words Kate had written. Camilla reportedly listened in silence. No interruptions, no sighs. When William paused, she finally spoke. She didn't want you to carry it. He didn't respond. So she continued. That's what we do, you know. The women in this family. We hold it in. Until we can't. It wasn't an accusation. It was a warning. Camilla's candid warning. Then Camilla said something that made William stop cold. You cannot do what your father did. The line hung in the air. William, stunned, asked what she meant. Camilla didn't hesitate. Charles buried himself in duty while your mother was crying out for help. You were too young to see it. But I wasn't. She went on. Kate is strong, yes. But she needs more than a husband who shows up at briefings and vanishes into schedules. If you keep choosing the crown over her, you'll lose her before the cancer does. William didn't answer. Because what could he say? He had been choosing duty. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. Didn't he? The guilt he couldn't voice. Camilla reportedly continued. This institution is built on sacrifice. But don't forget, William, you didn't marry the institution. You married Catherine. The silence on the other end of the line was long. Then came William's barely audible reply. I should have known sooner. And there it was. The guilt. The crushing realization that, while the world adored them as the perfect couple, Kate had been silently suffering. And he'd been too buried in schedules, appearances, and constitutional expectations to notice the full extent of it. Camilla's revelation. Then Camilla dropped a quiet bombshell. Do you know what Charles said when he first saw your mother's last hospital report? William said no. Camilla replied. He said, I thought we had more time. The line gutted him, because those were his words. He'd said the exact same thing. I thought we had more time, just hours earlier while sitting beside Kate. The repetition wasn't just eerie. It was a warning, a history on the verge of repeating itself. And Camilla saw it coming. But then, the tone shifted. Camilla, after years of being cast as the other woman, the royal mistress turned reluctant queen, shifted from warning to wisdom. William, she said, you're not your father. You don't have to be. She urged him to step back, temporarily, to reschedule, postpone, to let the world talk. Because the world would always talk. But his children? His wife? They wouldn't always wait. You can carry the crown later, she said. Right now, you carry her. It wasn't romantic. It was real. And it was the first time someone told William what no one else dared to say. The advice that changed everything. Camilla ended the call with a phrase that, according to insiders, has since echoed across Kensington. Don't let the press write your goodbye. What did she mean? That if Kate's condition worsened, the last memories shouldn't be tabloid headlines. They should be moments. Private, sacred, unforgettable. And for that, William needed to act now, before it was too late. The aftermath. After the call, William reportedly sat in silence for 20 minutes. No advisors, no aides, just him and the quiet. Then, one by one, he made 3 calls. The first to cancel a royal event in Wales. The second to reschedule 2 public addresses. And the third? To his own father. The king's absence. Now here's where it gets strange. When William called Charles to share the report, the king was unavailable. His team said he was in a private reflection period. Some suspect he already knew. Others believe he was deliberately keeping distance, perhaps fearing that engaging too deeply would derail his own tightly managed reign. But either way, William felt it. The absence, the void. And it was Camilla, not Charles, who filled it. Kate's reaction to the shift. The next morning, William visited Kate. He was different, more present, focused. He brought her tea himself. No aid. He sat longer than usual. They spoke, quietly, but with new clarity. And reportedly, for the first time in weeks, Kate said something that made William cry again. Not from pain, but from gratitude. She said, I thought I lost you to the crown. And William whispered back, not anymore. But as the palace adjusted, trouble brewed elsewhere. While William was rearranging schedules and drawing closer to Kate, across the Atlantic, Prince Harry had received a call of his own. Not from William, but from someone close to the situation. And what Harry learned set off a chain reaction that would undo what little calm remained. Because Meghan wasn't going to stay silent. And for the first time since their royal exit, she wanted in. What happens when the one man kept in the dark suddenly hears the truth? And it's worse than he ever imagined. Prince Harry, thousands of miles away from the royal epicenter, living a life both radically independent and uncomfortably exiled, received a call that shook his entire world. It wasn't from William. It wasn't from Charles. It wasn't from any senior royal aide with protocol in mind. No, this call came from someone unexpected. A personal connection with access. Someone who cared less about royal procedures and more about doing what they felt was right. And when Harry picked up, still groggy from the time difference, nothing could have prepared him for the words that came through the line. Harry, it's about Kate. The brother left behind. Let's take a step back. Ever since Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties, the communication between the brothers has been, at best, strained, and at worst, non-existent. Publicly, the palace claimed there was still an open line. Privately, that line had gone cold. And when Kate first began stepping away from public life, there were whispers that Harry had reached out, offering support, a gentle inquiry. but sources say he received a standard response from royal communications. The Princess of Wales is taking time to rest. Thank you for your concern. That was it. No emotion, no details, no invitation to speak to her directly. So Harry, frustrated but respectful of boundaries, stepped back. Until now. The call that broke the silence. The person who called Harry remains unnamed. But what's clear is that they had direct knowledge of Kate's current condition. They told him about the leaked report, about the prognosis, about William's reaction, and about how far the cancer had spread. They didn't sugarcoat it. And Harry didn't interrupt. He just listened. When the call ended, he sat in silence. For nearly 10 minutes. Not a single word. Then, slowly, he picked up his phone again and dialed a number he hadn't called in months. Meghan answers. The tension between Meghan and the rest of the royal family is well documented. But in this moment, Harry wasn't thinking about headlines. He was thinking about Kate, the woman who had once been his sister-in-law, his friend, his partner in royal engagements back when they were the Fab Four. When Meghan answered, Harry's voice was flat, controlled. Kate's worse than we thought. A pause. Then Meghan's response. Did William tell you? No, Harry replied. Someone else did. And just like that, the spark reignited. Because if there's one thing Meghan detests more than being cut off, it's being cut out. The rift deepens. According to a Montecito insider, Meghan's reaction wasn't purely emotional. It was strategic. Why didn't they tell us? Why was the world being kept in the dark? And then the question that lit the fuse. Why was I left out? For Meghan, the silence was personal. Yes, her relationship with Kate had deteriorated. Yes, there had been tension, accusations, leaked stories, cold shoulders. But in her mind, that didn't justify being excluded from a family crisis. And it certainly didn't justify Harry being blindsided. So she did what Meghan always does. She took action. The email that raised eyebrows. Hours later, a carefully worded email was sent from the office of Archewell to a senior figure in the royal household. Subject line, urgent request for clarity. In it, Meghan expressed concern for the Princess of Wales. She acknowledged hearing reports of Kate's worsening condition, and she requested a direct and truthful update out of respect for shared history and for the children's sake. But beneath the polite language, the message was clear. We know something, and we won't stay silent. Harry's dilemma. While Meghan drafted messages and plotted next steps, Harry was caught in emotional crossfire. He was devastated and furious, but he wasn't sure at whom. At William, for not calling? At the palace, for shutting him out? At himself, for walking away all those years ago? He scrolled through old photos on his phone. Kate holding Archie for the first time, laughing beside her at a charity polo match. Moments that felt like another life. And now, she was fading. And he was half a world away. The attempted call. That night, Harry tried to call William. Twice. The first time, no answer. The second time, straight to voicemail. No message was left. But sources say William saw the missed calls and deliberately didn't call back. Because in his eyes, Harry had made his choice years ago. And now wasn't the time for reconciliation. It was the time to protect Kate. Meghan's move. The next day, Meghan took things one step further. A subtle leak. Nothing direct. Nothing that could be traced. But enough. Enough for a high-level entertainment source in Los Angeles to receive a tip. Expect an announcement soon about Kate Middleton's health. The situation is more serious than reported. That tip found its way into the inbox of a gossip editor in New York. Then onto the radar of an Australian morning show. And just like that, the story began to spread. Damage control begins. Back in London, the palace scrambled. Calls were made. Statements were drafted. Briefings were held. Suddenly, aides were discussing how to frame Kate's health update without revealing the full extent of the prognosis. Because now, they didn't just have internal fears to manage. They had a transatlantic leak war. And Meghan wasn't done. An open letter? There are whispers, unconfirmed, but persistent, that Meghan is considering releasing a public statement. Something from one mother to another. A gesture of support, wrapped in concern, but strategically placed to reclaim moral ground, to re-enter the narrative not as a critic, but as a caring figure. Would such a statement be genuine? Calculated? Both? That's the contradiction of Meghan Markle. And that's what has the palace bracing. William's fury. When William learned of the leak, His reaction was swift and uncharacteristically emotional. According to one senior aide, he slammed his fist against a table during a private meeting. "She's turning this into a circus," he allegedly said. But it wasn't just about Meghan. It was about timing. Kate had just begun a new course of treatment. The children were still unaware of the full truth. And now, the world was watching again, with morbid curiosity, because someone had opened the door. And now the press was flooding in. Kate's response. When William told Kate about the leak, she reportedly just nodded. "I'm not surprised," she said. And then she said something that William would never forget. "Tell Harry. I don't blame him. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't approval. It was just compassion. The kind only someone facing the edge can give." But Harry didn't hear it from her. He heard it from an aide, delivered over text. A message that made him stop cold, because the words were soft. But the implication? She may never get the chance to say it in person. And then, Meghan made the decision. Just as the palace began preparing a carefully worded update, Meghan sat down with her team. She had a decision to make. Go public or wait. Speak now or stay silent. And her choice? It would escalate tensions to a level the royal family hadn't seen since the Oprah interview. Because Meghan wasn't going to sit this one out. She had something to say, and the world was going to hear it. What do you write when you know you may not have another chance to say goodbye? In a world where every movement is photographed, every word is parsed by the press, and every glance becomes a headline, some messages are written in secret, private, sacred, untouched by palace spin doctors or royal press offices. And that's exactly what Kate Middleton did. While the world speculated about her absence, while William shielded the children from the truth, while the media dissected her silence, Kate was writing a letter, not to the public, not to her doctors, but to one person, Prince William. And what she put in those pages would leave the future king reeling. The discovery. It happened on a Wednesday evening. William had returned from a short appearance, his first in nearly a week, visibly tired. Staff noted he was unusually quiet, retreating directly to his private quarters. But when he stepped into the master bedroom, something caught his eye. Placed neatly on his pillow was a folded envelope, cream-colored, unmarked, but unmistakable. Her handwriting, his name, nothing else. Just William. He didn't open it immediately. He sat down, holding it in his hand, staring at the seal. Because deep down, he already knew. This wasn't a love note. This wasn't a to-do list. This was something else. Opening the letter. When William finally broke the seal, his hands trembled slightly. He unfolded the paper, recognized the scent immediately, Kate's perfume. And then, he began to read. The handwriting was familiar, but shakier than usual. The letter wasn't long, just under 2 pages. But every word carried the weight of a lifetime. What it said, and what it didn't. While the full contents of the letter have not been released, and likely never will be, several palace sources have confirmed its themes. It began not with drama or desperation, but with quiet grace. She thanked him, not just for standing by her now, but for being her strength for over a decade. She referenced moments from their early courtship. Private jokes, clumsy dates, the first time they danced in private at Balmoral. She mentioned the children, each one. George's seriousness, Charlotte's fire, Louis's laughter. She described dreams she had for them, schools she wanted them to attend, values she hoped they'd carry. And then, the tone shifted. If you're reading this, one source confirmed the line. If you're reading this, then I trust you already know the truth. That single sentence sent William into tears. Because it wasn't just a letter. It was a preparation. Kate had written it weeks before her condition worsened, anticipating the moment when the truth could no longer be hidden. A contingency plan for the heart. A quiet goodbye, just in case. The part that broke him. Near the end of the letter, Kate reportedly wrote, "If I can't hold your hand at the end, know that I never let go." William, upon reading that line, broke down completely. A staff member who passed by the room later said the future king had locked the door. No one was allowed in. For over an hour, he didn't move, didn't answer calls, didn't speak to anyone. Because that letter? It wasn't just from a wife to her husband. It was from one soul to another. Why she wrote it in secret? Kate has always understood the pressures of being royal. Everything must be recorded, documented, preserved. But not this. She wanted this to be just for William. Not an email. Not a dictated message. Handwritten, private, and above all, timed. It wasn't left out carelessly. It was placed when she felt her body shifting, when the treatments stopped working as expected. She sensed it, and she wanted William to know, without forcing him to watch her break as she said the words aloud. The hidden page. Here's where things get even more emotional. Tucked behind the main letter, folded even smaller, was a second note. A page addressed not to William, but to George. Only George. Sources say Kate had been writing letters to each of the children. Not to be read now, but one day, in the future, when they were ready, when they needed her most. But George's letter? She left it with William, because she knew he would need to read it too. And what she wrote inside changed everything. George's letter. We don't know the full text, but royal insiders confirm that Kate wrote to George as both a mother and a future queen consort. She told him it was okay to be scared, that strength didn't mean silence, that crying didn't make him weak. She said she was proud of him, so proud, and that he reminded her of William every single day. And one final line, take care of your brother and sister. And when you feel alone, look at the stars. I'll be there. It was the kind of message a child would never forget, the kind that would live in his heart forever. And William? He read it 3 times. He couldn't bring himself to fold it. He simply held it, trembling. How William reacted. The next morning, William canceled his public schedule again. No explanation given. He spent the entire day with Kate. No meetings. No calls. Just them. They sat by the window, read books, listened to old music. And for a moment, things felt still. Not okay. Not normal. But still. Like time had paused. To give them one more afternoon. Kate's only request. Before William left her side that night, Kate said something simple. Don't let this break you. He looked at her, eyes full of everything he couldn't say, and she smiled. Not the smile for cameras or for guests, just the one he knew. I mean it, she whispered. You've still got work to do, and they need you strong. And then, as he walked toward the door, she added, there's a letter for Charlotte too, when the time's right. The Queen's involvement. When Queen Camilla was informed of the letter, she reportedly responded with uncharacteristic silence. Then she said, she's doing what Diana did. That comparison struck deep, because Diana, too, had written letters to William and Harry. Unsent, unseen, but preserved. Now Kate was doing the same, not as a royal, but as a mother who knew time was slipping through her fingers. But one line in the letter raised questions. Among the beautiful, emotional lines in Kate's letter, there was one sentence that stood out. A line that wasn't about love or children or legacy, but about someone outside the palace. And it read, please speak to her when you're ready. She needs to hear it from you. Who was her? Some believe it referred to Meghan. Others say it was Kate's sister, Pippa. A few insiders suspect it was Queen Camilla. Regardless, the inclusion of that line sparked curiosity and concern, because it hinted at unfinished business, a final piece of closure. And William wasn't sure if he could do it. But what came next would force his hand. Just as William began to process the letter, as he began thinking about the children, about the succession, about the road ahead, a new wave of headlines exploded online, because someone had gotten wind of the letter's existence. And the press? They were hunting for it. Journalists were knocking on hospital staff doors. Tabloids were drafting speculation pieces. One even posted a blurred image of handwriting, claiming it was from the letter. And just like that, the one thing Kate tried to keep sacred was now on the edge of being exposed. But what came next would change everything. Because just as the headlines reached a fever pitch, one of Kate's nurses broke the silence. Is Kate Middleton walking the same tragic path Princess Diana once did? The question sent chills down the spines of royal watchers as whispers began to circulate, not just about Kate's declining health, but about the haunting parallels between the Princess of Wales and the mother-in-law she never met. 2 women, 1 title, both adored, both scrutinized, both privately tormented while publicly praised, and now, both standing at different points in time, on the edge of heartbreaking decisions within a system designed to preserve power, not people. But where Diana once rebelled against the crown with fire, Kate has taken a quieter route. Until now. Because as her condition deteriorates and the palace fights to control the narrative, what no one expected was a voice from the past echoing through the corridors of royal memory. A voice Kate deeply respected. A voice that may have inspired her to take one final, brave step. The moment the nurse spoke, her name hasn't been released publicly for legal reasons, but inside the hospital, she's referred to as the Whisper. A veteran palliative care nurse with over 20 years of experience, she was reportedly one of the few medical professionals allowed to interact with Kate during her private treatments. And a few days ago, she broke protocol. Just once. A short, anonymous voicemail to a London journalist. 5 words. She reminds me of Diana. That was it. No more. No less. But those 5 words? They ignited something. Because it wasn't just about mannerisms or presence. It was about something deeper. A sense of fate. Diana and Kate, the public mirror. From the beginning, Kate Middleton was compared to Princess Diana. The graceful walk. The poised interviews. The commoner to royalty fairy tale. But the deeper parallels were always quietly avoided by palisades. Because both women, despite different eras, battled private storms with one goal. To protect their children. Diana spoke out, famously telling the BBC, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." Kate, in contrast, spoke less, smiled more. But insiders now say that beneath the silence was a growing storm of her own. The diary connection. Here's where things take a darker turn. One of Diana's former staffers, now long retired, revealed in a closed-door conversation that Diana kept a set of private notes toward the end of her life. These were not the infamous panorama notes. These were more intimate, more emotional, unfiltered, and in them, Diana allegedly wrote about her fears, not of death, but of disappearing, of being silenced, forgotten, reduced to headlines instead of humanity. Sound familiar? Because sources now claim that Kate, aware of these writings, began doing something similar, not for revenge, but for clarity, for her children, for William. Kate's private recordings. Aides close to the royal household have confirmed that Kate began recording private messages on a secure, offline tablet. No iCloud, no syncing, just her voice, talking about her life, her struggles, her dreams for each of the children, and yes, her fears. In one recording, reportedly made during a particularly difficult night, Kate is said to have whispered, "I wonder if this is how Diana felt, surrounded, but somehow still alone." That sentence has shaken everyone who's heard it. Because in just 14 words, she bridged a generational gap of grief. William's worst fear. When William heard that line, after one of the aides played it back for him in confidence, he reportedly stood up, left the room, and didn't return for hours. Not because he was angry, but because in that moment, he saw the echo. Diana's tragic arc. Repeating, Kate wasn't dying because of royal life, but the system around her, its silence, its secrecy, its obsession with image, was smothering her ability to live. And William? He blamed himself. Camilla's reflection. When Queen Camilla was made aware of Kate's recordings, she offered a quiet, painful reflection to a confidant. That house breaks women. A shocking admission, considering her own battle to be accepted. But it revealed something unspoken for years. The royal institution has never been designed to support women. It uses them, honors them, but rarely heals them. And Kate, like Diana, was beginning to crumble under that weight. The press begins to draw parallels. With the anonymous nurse's voicemail leaking to multiple media outlets, speculation grew. Headlines appeared across Europe. Is Kate Middleton the new Diana? Echoes of tragedy. Public concern grows for Princess of Wales. And then one particular photo resurfaced. An older image of Kate, taken months ago, where she's walking through a corridor, alone, with her head slightly bowed. Placed side by side with a near-identical image of Diana in 1996, the resemblance is uncanny. Different women. Same silence. Same pain. Same palace. Harry's breaking point. Prince Harry, who had already been struggling with the news of Kate's condition, was reportedly furious when he saw the media comparisons. Because he lived that story once already. He watched as his mother was hunted by cameras, dissected by journalists, and manipulated by courtiers. And now, it was happening again. Only this time, to Kate. And he was watching from a distance. Powerless. The Diana letter that shocked the palace. Just when things couldn't get more emotional, a stunning revelation emerged from the royal archives. A letter. Handwritten. dated 3 months before Diana's fatal crash. Addressed to my sons. While the full contents remain sealed, portions have been reviewed by William in private. In it, Diana allegedly wrote, "If anything happens to me, know this. I tried to protect you from the world, but I couldn't protect myself from the system." That line was read aloud to William by a royal archivist during a recent private consultation. The room reportedly fell silent, because once again, history was no longer rhyming. It was repeating the monarchy's quiet dilemma. With Kate's health now rapidly deteriorating, and media drawing increasingly uncomfortable parallels to Diana's final days, the palace faces a dangerous question. How do they prevent another tragedy? Not just physically, but emotionally, culturally, symbolically. Because if Kate fades from the public eye completely, only to reappear in funeral processions, like Diana, the public backlash could be catastrophic. And William knows this. He doesn't want another balcony wave. He wants truth. But every time he moves toward transparency, advisors push back, reminding him of tradition. But William isn't just the future king. He's a husband and a father. And the echoes of Diana are getting louder. The nurse speaks again. That same anonymous nurse. She left one more voicemail, this time to a trusted podcast host. A single quote. "She's preparing the children. That's all I can say. The rest is too painful." That line sent shockwaves across royal reporting networks. Because for the first time, someone inside confirmed what many had feared. Kate was facing the end. Not theoretically. Not months from now. Now. And then. The children were removed from school. Reports confirmed that George, Charlotte, and Louis were quietly withdrawn from school early that week. No public explanation. No photos. No statements. Just silence. But the truth? They were brought to spend time with their mother. Because the time she has left is not measured in years, or even seasons. It may be measured in days. And just as this echoed Diana's final weeks, one more piece surfaced. A never-before-seen photograph of Kate, taken by a friend weeks ago, was quietly handed to William. It shows her, smiling softly, in the garden with the children. A candid moment.